Right, I would like to introduce you guys to Jin SHA. He's the VP of Business Development and Corporate Strategy at JW Player. They're a US-based technology company, and Jin is going to take you through some opportunities of how we leverage technology to help your monetization potentially in your games.
Hi, everybody. I appreciate you guys sticking around. I know it's the last presentation on the last day of the conference, and there's free beer downstairs. So the fact that you're here means a lot to me. Quick intro. My name is Jin. Worked at JW Player, previously Longtail Video, since December of 2011. Wear numerous hats, one of which is VP of Biz Dev. In a past life, I was an investment banker and a private equity investor. A little bit on JW Player and why it's relevant for this conversation. It was actually founded in 2007 as an ad network. We acquired the IP to something called the JW Player in the mid-2000s from a man by the name of Jeroen Weitering, who's actually Dutch. He designed the original JW Player in his dorm room in Eindhoven. And so we have fairly steep Dutch roots, which is part of the reason why I'm here. We are a fairly small company. I joined when we were about 15 people, now we're about 45. But we have a very, very broad footprint. As you can see, we are live on about 2 million sites, 700 million viewers across 121 countries, and 7 billion video streams every single month. So video advertising. I don't have a ton of experience in gaming specifically, but we do know the video ad space quite well. One of the interesting pieces of data that I found doing all of my research was that looking at the way that Zynga monetizes its users, fewer than 1% of total users drive over 50% of total revenue. From an objective standpoint, that type of customer revenue concentration is a little more, it's pretty disconcerting. Additionally, 90% of total Zynga users have never paid the company a single cent. That is also a little disconcerting. So when I think about the gaming space, a couple of pain points sort of jump out at me. One is over-reliance on super whales. Two is you need to find a way to monetize free user base. And finally, in an attempt to try and make sure that you don't degrade player experience or I guess, engagement, it's important to find ways to maximize the use of ad units and be efficient about those ad units. Fortunately, studies consistently show that gamers are far more likely than their non-gaming counterparts to be open to advertising. So you've got that going for you. One piece on the video advertising side, which I think is just, it's sort of obvious that it helps address all of those pain points, is that one, video ads tend to drive much higher CPMs than their banner counterparts. That speaks to the efficiency factor of advertising using video. Two, video ads have much higher click-through rates than their banner counterparts. And finally, used correctly, video ads are much more or much less intrusive relative to the banner that could potentially overlay across your game. Taking a quick step back, video technology, or as it relates to advertising, has changed a little bit in recent years. So just walking through how this typically works, one major facet of how things have changed is around standardization of ad tagging. So today, the three major types of ad tags are VAST, VPaid, and VMAP. And almost every single ad network uses those, which is different from the model as recently as 4 or 5 years ago. And what these ad tags do is they present the information within the creative type to a player or a ingestion module, which is then used to play that advertising alongside your content, whether that's a game, whether that's a video. And then on the player side, that analytics is tracked, so you can track impressions, click-through rates, ad skipping, et cetera. One of the big things I want to emphasize here is that standardization element. Now that everyone is sort of speaking the same language, it really empowers the publisher to try and coordinate more closely with ad networks, something that we didn't really have in the past. And as technology has improved on the player side, one of the things that we're integrating more closely with right now is the development of APIs. So APIs allow publishers greater control over those advertisements. Now you have impression verification, you have scheduling, which allows you to sit there and say, well, we want these ads to play at these specific intervals or based on these specific markers within a piece of content. And also finally, waterfalling, which from the perspective of a publisher is ideal because it allows you to build relationships with, instead of one ad network, you can use 5, 10, all of them, and use that to maximize both fill and CPM as it relates to your monetization. Just a quick overview of some of the language that you'll probably see. And the reality is you have encountered all of these ads in your day-to-day. Everyone here uses online video. But a linear ad is effectively the video ads that play before, during, or after a particular piece of content. Non-linear ads are the overlays that you see that typically cover the bottom fifth of a particular piece of content. And then companion ads are the typically static either picture or interactive ads that play alongside a primary ad. And you can see an example of that down at the bottom. And the point that I really want to emphasize here is that this standardization that has occurred over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's done in conjunction primarily with the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau, has allowed for everyone to speak the same language, which ultimately benefits the publisher. Rather than relying on single ad partners, which speaking to a number of game developers over the past couple of days, it sounds like that has been the status quo for quite a while now. You can go out and, again, build relationships with every single one of these guys up on the screen, which will ultimately drive higher monetization over time. So talking a little bit about the benefits of video advertising. One of the major elements is that you are, as a publisher and as a developer, already collecting a ton of information about your users. So the fact that you know that the majority of a certain user base is an 18 to 25 male who loves a cat video allows you to find the appropriate advertising to target that particular demo. The ability to go in and skin a given player for your video advertising to blend in seamlessly with your game is something else that is, it's all about creating an engaging user experience that doesn't take them away from the experience of playing that game. Something that's relatively new is ad skipping. So the Google TrueView and now within VAST 3.0, it supports the ability for a user to sit there and self-select the advertisements that are relevant to them. The pro in this is that it allows a user to say, this ad has nothing to do with me, I don't want to watch it, they can skip it. So they now have a more positive experience. And the pro to you is that it actually drives higher CPMs because advertisers know that if a user decides to watch an ad, that is a higher quality view. And finally, one of the things that you should be mindful of as a publisher is that there are solutions out there today that are designed to be seamless across platforms. So whether you're using a Chrome browser on a desktop or a Chrome browser on a mobile device, you want to look for solutions that are seamless across and unified across those platforms. And just to give you guys some examples of in-game ad implementations, and again, I'm sure you've all seen these, but load screen ads are typically the ones that play before or during a game, levels, et cetera. And what this is you're utilizing natural breaks in the game itself to serve an ad. Pre-rolls in this particular case, or mid-rolls, tend to drive the highest CPMs. Incentivized advertising. This is something that I actually encountered playing games like The Sims on my iPad every once in a while. And what it is you're using a video advertising effectively as a barter for taking premium content. So coins, maybe a special building or something. And one of the nice things here is that click-through rates for these types of advertising are ridiculously high compared to your standard banner campaigns. The other thing that I personally find pretty appealing about incentivized ads is it actually allows me, as someone who inherently is biased against paying for games or things inside games, it allows me to continue playing that game and have a path to achievement for premium content that I would otherwise never buy. Environmental ads. These are actually something I've never personally encountered, but for immersive type gaming, it's actually utilizing an ad within the context of, let's say you have 50 Sims inside of a movie theater. You can actually play a movie trailer. That's in a real world setting would be an advertising, but in the context of your immersive game also becomes an advertising. Completion rates for these types of ads tend to be very, very high. And again, it's ultra targeted to the specific demo that's actually playing that game and doing that real life activity inside of that game. And finally, this is my least favorite type of ad. Adgating are advertisements that are essentially used to prevent a user from advancing either a level or acquiring a piece of content unless they watch an ad. So these tend to drive very, very high completion rates. But the trade-off here is that there is the high potential of degradation of that user's experience. So ultimately, you do have the option of using this, and I have encountered these in the past. But again, it is at the expense of your user's experience. One thing I did want to quickly touch on, and this was a late addition to my presentation, was thinking through, there is an interesting parallel that exists between the way that online video infrastructure developed over time and the evolution of the HTML5 versus native app debate. In the past, in I guess, ecosystem 1.0, within online video, YouTube was the only platform that was available for folks who wanted to move their content online. And it was wonderful because it provided the infrastructure, provided the distribution, but the trade-off was that a publisher had to give up substantial control over monetization and obviously the ability to distribute their content the way that they wanted to. And I see a lot of parallel between that platform and the native app world, where users or publishers are submitting their content to the Android store, to the iOS app store, and using that as a methodology for distribution. However, the issue becomes one of now you have to go into a rev share agreement with those stores. Now you also have to submit your content, and it takes a little while to get approved. All that removes control from you as a publisher. Over time, what has evolved is in this 2.0 ecosystem, you now have full stack solutions within the video context. So companies like Brightcove, Ooyala identified a market inefficiency as it related to how YouTube was running their model and said, hey, we can go out, we can empower users with the technology infrastructure and give them that control back. And so larger publishers, the ESPNs, the NBC Universals of the world, moved over to using these full stack solutions. The downside for the full stack solution is, of course, they were extremely, extremely expensive, sometimes prohibitively so. In the HTML5 versus native app gaming evolution, the thing that I've noticed over time, and interestingly enough, I was reviewing articles from starting in 2009 up until earlier this year, and the debate has not really changed in HTML5 versus native app. The one thing that I've observed is that HTML5 has become dramatically more sophisticated relative to where it was, or the other alternatives like Flash were back in the early 2010s. And what that's allowed for is gaming companies are now able to use these platforms independent of reliance on these native app environments. And you're building more sophisticated games, and you're allowing for better monetization as it relates to how you want to control that infrastructure. And finally, in the new world, there is now, in video specifically, feature parity as it relates to, I can now, as a publisher, go out and choose the best player, I can choose the best CDN, I can choose the best encoding company, and combine those on my own back end. It takes a little bit more work, but now I can have that same full stack or the same solution that YouTube used to offer at a substantial discount. Within the context of the gaming environment, I personally see an evolution of HTML5 or perhaps some other standard that will allow gaming publishers to actually go out and build games that are comparable to native app environments, that will allow you to distribute on your own terms and monetize on your own terms, independent of Google dictating it or Apple dictating it. So I guess in terms of a conclusion, I think that one of the major takeaways for me is that you guys should be thinking about video advertising as a complementary tool relative to in-app or partnerships. Used correctly alongside in-game monetization, which I feel is still probably one of the more important components of your P&L. It can serve as a source of capital for underwriting both R&D and marketing within the context of this increasingly competitive marketplace. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Happy to address any questions.
Questions?
Do you, would we have to use your player to, or the player from, does the ad sort of delivery network, do they supply the player?
In some cases, they do. There are different models, and one of the interesting things that we've seen in the past is that, I don't know if you are familiar with a company called Banner Connect. There are other companies out there, Zito comes to mind, who used to provide their own homebrew player. What's happened over time is that ad standards have evolved. So VAST3, for example, came out, and we recently launched support for VAST3. But these advertising networks are realizing that they are advertising networks and not player companies. So we, as a company, have actually been approached by a number of ad networks to say, hey, we'd like to license your player in a manner that we can then distribute to all of our publishers, so we no longer have to build all this stuff in-house and maintain like a 4-person player team. So yes and no. There are other options out there, FlowPlayer, and I believe Brightcove actually offers another solution. Kaltura offers a solution, but feel free to use ours.
Yeah, I found I did a lot of monetization via video ads and games in the past, and it seems like the secret sauce is a really good video player that's really flexible to be able to work with, and that's why their technology is, I think, helpful. One of the reasons why we wanted them here. A lot of the video players that are used by some of the ad networks are very generic and don't necessarily kind of pass the test. So it's everyone wants one stop because they don't want to have to deal with two. But I think, you know, in certain cases, technology, like a really good piece of core technology, especially if you're leveraging it across many different properties or apps, is really helpful.
So so I basically have to bundle that somehow, no matter what platform I'm building for. You'll supply a player which I bundle into my game or app, and then you take care of the rest.
So the way that it typically works is that the player would sit on your website within the embed code of the site, and you would be able to, you would communicate, your ad network would communicate all the relevant information for the advertising itself, and the player would just sit there. You wouldn't have to necessarily embed it into the code of your game at all, unless you were trying to, yeah, so that's right. It's not a very complicated process, and happy to put you in touch with our product guys who can walk you through how that would help.
And the VAST tags are what they're using a lot for mobile, right? I mean, it's the
yeah. So for example, our player supports VAST across HTML5. So you would be able to sort of seamlessly manage those same ad tags, whether you're in a mobile or a desktop environment. And that's becoming sort of standard practice across all players over time.
Great. Any more questions? Thanks for hanging in, guys.
Yeah, thanks,
Have a nice
guys.
day.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one.